Welcome to tonight's tactics class. We're going to cover some combinations and then two mate and two puzzles at the end. These combinations are all taken from the Encyclopedia of Combinations published by the Chess Informant people from Serbia. Back in the day, Chess Informant was the de facto go-to book for grandmasters, and Bobby Fischer would pour through that it was published every 6 months. Now it's published quarterly. And even today, all the grandmaster games are annotated by very good grandmasters that explain things quite clearly. But of course, it's all done with notation. Anyway, they published this very nice book. It has 3,000 tactic examples, and they rate them in three manners. There's basic, intermediate, and advanced. And we'll be doing two basic, two intermediate, and two advanced. And you'll see that the advanced can be quite difficult. The others are more solvable, but it's fun to see the advanced ones just to see how the grandmasters come up with some of these solutions to their chess positions. So the one thing about these combinations tonight, they all follow a theme. And the theme tonight is interference. And what that means in chess is black is able to defend the position in the starting position because his pieces and pawns defend key weaknesses or key pieces that are being attacked. However, white can at some point make a move that cuts the defensive diagonal row or file, the communication between black pieces, allowing white to pull off a winning combination. Now, I think when you study chess tactics, it's best to always study a theme because let's say you have an hour to study tactics and you can get in 5 tactic puzzles in an hour. By studying the same kind of tactic, 5 different positions, you get the pattern reinforced in your memory. Now, I know that you can do tactic puzzles on chess.com, which are quite good. The default, though, is kind of like a shotgun approach where it randomly selects the theme. It might be knight forks, a double attack, or some other theme. And I recommend that you study the same idea for your whole session because, the patterns reinforce each other. It helps you learn it better. Now, understand chess.com, you do have the option to set it up if you explore the menus. So it's quite doable there too. So that gives us our first clue. The second thing, if you look under the little chessboard on the right, you'll see it says 1-0. Well, it's white to play and win. That's what that means. And if you look at the names at the top on the right side, the notation board, you'll see it's Benko versus Robey USA Championship way back in 1963. Of course, Pal Benko came from Hungary and was won the United States Championship several times, and he won very many Swiss tournaments over the years, and he published some great articles and books when he was active. And interesting enough, the Polgar family were friends with Benko. He was, of course, much older than the 3 sisters, but they became good friends. They're all from Hungary. So that's an interesting little thing, especially since Susan Polgar has set up her program at Webster College and helps develop grandmasters right here in St. Louis. So anyway, we'll jump into this first one. So we know it's white to play and win, and we know there's interference at some point. Now, it's before you start jumping to white moves, just looking at moves, you got to study the chess position and see the tactical opportunities that might exist. So I'm going to point some out. First, we'll start with the white queen. She can move here, checking the black king and attacking the black rook on d1. Of course, the black queen defends the rook, so that's adequate. The king would move, and that doesn't win, but that is a tactic. There's a queen double attack on the black king and the rook on d1. We don't have a lot of other tactics. The white knight can't go here, here, or here without being taken. And the rook is blocked by the pawn, and it doesn't have any real attacking moves laterally or backwards. So it looks like our main idea is this queen check. But the problem is the black queen defends the rook. Well, remember interference, that file, the D file from D7 where the queen is to D1, that's the line that we need to cut. And the way we can cut it, we can move our knight over here. That will block the queen from defending the rook and threaten the queen check on the second move. So let's say we move the knight there, pawn takes knight, we do the queen check, the king moves, and then we take the rook. So that's the idea. And I think that's going to work. So we'll just make that knight move. We cut the line of defense of the queen to the rook. And we're also obviously threatening knight takes knight, winning, and he can't do knight takes knight. That would drop his queen. So that's basically it. Pawn takes, check, king over. So that's a pretty little combination, but that's the solution to it. And so going back to our starting position, you can see that the first move, that's this interference thing. The white knight interferes with the defense of the black queen defending the black rook, allowing the queen check to win the rook. So we'll go on to the next puzzle. Whoops. You said F11, you thought?
Oh, yes. And then just click no.
Oh, okay.
You saved
I don't want to save it. I already saved it. Okay. So here's our next puzzle, and this one is white to win also. Now, if you look at the top on the right side, at the bottom of the little chessboard, it says 1-0, white to play and win. Same theme. There's going to be some defensive line that's cut. And let's look at the players. The name is Stolberg versus Zach. It was in a USSR tournament, and it was way back in 1938. Well, it turns out that Stolberg was a famous Swedish grandmaster. He was this Swedish champion, and back in those days there were many grandmasters in the USSR, mainly Russia and other countries. And Zach was one of the Russian grandmasters. He's not one of the premier grandmasters, but he was quite good. I mean, you had to be really good to play in the USSR tournaments. Okay, so anyway, white pulls off the win. So let's look at what white's possible attacking moves are. The one that jumps out first is the queen and the knight are attacking the f7 pawn. And if the queen can take the pawn, the king would have to move to the corner and we'd have queen takes knight, checkmate. Of course, you can see that the black queen defends the pawn. So there's the line that we have to cut. Now we can cut it by moving our rook, our bishop up next to the queen. So the question is, do we cut it with the bishop or the rook? Well, we have to look into the future to see it. So let's just say we do the rook. Obviously, he has to do bishop takes rook. Knight takes rook, doesn't cut it. Queen takes pawn check, king to the corner, queen to e8 check. The knight has to go to f8, and queen takes knight is checkmate. And of course, queen takes rook doesn't cut it because we do bishop takes queen, winning the queen, and we still get queen takes pawn check. So the only move for black is to do bishop takes pawn, allowing us to do queen takes pawn check, and then the king moves to the corner. But because the bishop moved from c8 to d7, now the black rook on a8 protects the knight, and we don't exactly have a immediate checkmate. But what we do have, you see our white queen is on f7. The black bishop is on d7. The black bishop can't move because the black queen is undefended, and we would win the queen with queen takes queen. So somehow we need to find an attacking move to threaten checkmate. And the reason we did the rook, we kept the bishop back because now the bishop can retreat to c4. Hold on, wrong color here. The bishop can retreat to c4. Whoops. There we go. And reinforce the queen. Remember, the white queen's on f7, so now the threat is queen to g8 checkmate. That means the knight would have to move somewhere. And we might have the nice, the knight moves, and watch this. We have this smothered mate, queen to g8 check, rook takes queen, knight to f7 checkmate. Let's step through it. So our starting move is rook down. That's our interference move, blocking the queen from defending f7. The bishop has to take. Queen takes pawn check, king over, bishop back. That's why we had to do the rook and not the bishop down. We threaten queen to g8 checkmate. If the knight goes here, knight takes knight, threatens the queen, and queen takes g7 checkmate. That's curtains. And if he goes over here, we get the very nice smothered mate. So that's a very nice combination.
It's nice.
So that Swedish Grandmaster Stolberg was quite the attacking player. He was the Swedish champion, and he was in the top 20 or 30.
Don't exit. Yeah, do the X11, F11 thing.
Okay. We'll go on to the next one. This is white to play and win also. And this is another USSR tournament between two grandmasters, someone named Kodos and McInnes. Now, I never heard of Kodos before, but McInnes was quite a famous grandmaster back in his day. And this was played in 1964. White to play and win again. So, let us look at the tactical possibilities here. The knight could take the pawn check. Whoops, wrong color. Take the pawn check, but the king would just move over, and I don't see a follow-up. Now, the other thing, we have a nice little possible check with the queen. Of course, in that case, the bishop would block, and then the black queen, would guard the second rank. So the black queen guards this way. Okay. So we need to disrupt the black queen guarding the bishop on f7 and potentially the h7 pawn. So the point we need to block is right where this red square is. And it's very convenient that we have one piece that's a rook on e1 that can move to that square. So that's our interference move, and that's the solution. So we make that move, and obviously we're threatening queen takes bishop checkmate. Knight takes rook doesn't protect the bishop, and queen takes would lose the queen to pawn takes queen. So the only move is rook takes queen. And now it looks like black has defended himself a little bit, because if we were to do queen to h8, he could drop his bishop back to g8. And if we did pawn takes rook check, he could do queen takes pawn. And the queen defends, and then the king could run over to the queen side by going king to e8. So I was looking at this earlier today to refresh my memory on this puzzle. I've seen it before. And I was racking my brain. I couldn't really remember it. But it turns out there's a very nice move here.
Is it knight takes e7?
Yep.
Ah.
Knight takes f7.
Oh.
And now the threat is, say, knight here picking up the queen. So black, and we still have pawn takes rook check. So there's really nothing better than rook takes knight. But now there's no block on the back row. So that's a checkmate move.
Yeah, nice.
And that's a very nice combination. So, but these are hard to see. This is 3 moves in advance. But to me, the hard move to see.
And if he played king b8 instead of taking it, then
King where?
king g8, I mean.
G8?
Then you have knight h6 and queen h8 is mate. Is that true?
No, we have checkmate there.
Oh, it's 1-move checkmate. I thought it was a 2-move checkmate there.
Yeah,
I thought you could go king f8, and then I was going to go queen h8 checkmate.
Good point, though.
It's even easier.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a nice combination. But again, to me, the tricky move to see was here, because we saw queen to h8 check, and the bishop drops back. And it's not, to me, it wasn't immediately obvious that knight takes bishop. I forgot now there's nothing to go to g8 to block the queen check. And with that pawn on d6 covers, the king escaped to e7.
Yeah.
So the king is trapped.
Nice one.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next puzzle. This time, these are a couple Chinese players. I never heard of either one of them. Nanlin versus Zill back in 1988. And this time it's black to play and win. Then one glance at the position, you can see black does have some nice attacking chances. Right off the bat, there's a potential. The queen and bishop operate on these diagonals.
Do you want to flip the board? Does that matter? Control F.
Control F?
Yeah.
Well, let's look at it from black's point of view. ease it. So you see, with that, the knight is blocking the black bishop, and with the knight out of the way, we'd threaten some inroads with the queen supported by the bishop. Of course, we have black has the slight problem that white has a counter defensive move. He just takes the bishop. That means we need to move our knight to open the bishop line, but we got to cut the white rook. So the obvious possible knight move is here, and that's the square that blocks the rook from taking the bishop, while giving us time to drop our queen to f3, threatening queen to g2 checkmate. And then hopefully we also have the black pawn on f5 and e5 that can advance to f4. And once that pawn's on f4, pawn takes g3 would open up the rook on f8. So we have a couple other attacking possibilities. And we have this. A little confusing with all those arrows, but those are essentially our attacking possibilities. And that's what you should do before you try to solve these. Look at the squares you can move your pieces to really checkmate or hurt the white position in this case, or the opposition. So let's jump into this and we'll do our knight move. Now, we're threatening queen to f3. And he has nothing really. Rook takes, knight doesn't add anything. We just do pawn takes. So he's going to have to do, this is the main line, pawn takes. And naturally, we drop in here, threatening, I'm saying naturally, but maybe that's not it. Maybe that's it. So we're threatening queen to g2 mate. The only way to defend it is to move the knight somewhere. And the logical move is to put it where it can't be attacked, right there. Now if we do queen to h1 check, he can run up to f2, and we can go to g2 check, but then he can run to e1 and protect his queen, and we kind of run out of threats. Yeah. And this is the hard part to see. Getting this far is not, it's tricky, but we can get this far. But the really hard move to find is the winning move. It's advancing the pawn. Now, with that pawn up there, we threaten queen down, king up. We have pawn takes pawn check, opening the rook. Then we got our bishop, queen, and rook converging, and we're going to win the black queen, or maybe even get a checkmate out of it. So, is there a defense here, and what would it be? We have two possible, we have the h1 check. That's a checkmate, by the way. Queen to h1 is a checkmate, so he's got to bring his queen here to cover that checkmate. But if he does that, we have pawn takes pawn, and we're on the queen, and if the queen moves away from the second row, we have queen to f2 checkmate. And if he moves across the second row, we have queen to h1 checkmate. Now he does have a spite check, queen here check on the king, but we just move our king up one square, and there's no follow-up checks for black. So that's pretty much it. You can't really stop queen to h1 checkmate. So we'll move on to the next one. Okay, now we have from 1990. This was played in a city called Novi Sad. Do you know where that is?
Oh, I have no idea.
I think it's in Serbia,
Oh, interesting.
but I'm not sure. The white player is Wolkiewicz. Excuse my mispronunciation of Polish names. I think he's a Polish player. Skembris, though, that's a Slavic name, and I think it's in Novi Sad is Serbia in the former Yugoslavia. This was played in 1990. And this time it's white to play and win.
Oh, can we flip the board?
Yeah, let's flip the board. What was
Control F.
Control F. Okay, white to play and win. Now, once again, we have the queen and knight converging on f7. We also have this bishop here. It attacks there. Of course, that's defended by knight and bishop. And the rook, so the queen defends over there. That's the line. We need to break the queen's defense. And we can drop our knight in. No, we can't drop our knight in because we need the knight on f7. So the only piece to drop in there to break that is the rook. And then obviously he's going to do bishop takes, and we're going to do queen takes pawn check. Then the black king can go to one of two squares. He can go to h8 or h7. And it's not clear how we're going to break through here. So we're going to step into it as far and then look for the solution. Let's just step through the moves.
H7 looks tricky.
Rook down.
Huh.
Bishop take. Well, we're going to get into it and then try to solve it.
Okay.
Okay, so this simplifies it a little bit. We won't have to think so much
Yeah.
in our heads.
Yeah.
Now, he can go to h8 or h7.
Now H8 looks simpler. 'Cause
Well,
knight G6.
h8, we do have knight to g6, and we have knight takes bishop check.
Oh, you know, I totally missed that the knight's defending G7 too, though.
That's true.
I did think that was a mate. Maybe it's not so easy either way.
Well, the king has to go. We have to pick one square or the other.
Sure.
Now, I think, because I looked at this earlier today, so I think pretty clearly the better move is here, but we can double back to the other move. Now, this is the next move is the move that's really hard to find. It's move 3 for us, so it's only 3 moves in advance. But I challenged the audience to find the winning move here because it's not a check, and it doesn't involve an immediate mate or anything. So what's the winning move? I guess the only way I can say it is we don't have enough horsepower to finish black off.
Yeah. So
Now,
bishop E4.
we have a bishop on g2. What's that doing for us? The answer is nothing. Now, black has no counter threats. He can't do pawn takes bishop. Then we have knight to g6 checkmate. He can't do queen takes knight. We have bishop takes queen. He can't do queen takes c4 pawn. The knight covers. Now, he could do queen to d6. Plus, we can play knight takes bishop at some point. Then we would threaten queen takes the undefended rook. But to build our attack, we need to bring our bishop to g2 somewhere. And obviously, the only thing worth attacking is the knight on f5. So this is the key, the winning move. Now, one of the good things about that move is if that knight moves out of the way, the bishop covers the king's escape square to h7, and we would have knight to g6, king up, we get a discovered check, which wipes him out. Knight takes bishop, discovered check. Then we can take the bishop on d7. So I guess we might be threatening bishop. Well, what we're really threatening, I think, is knight takes bishop, then we're threatening the queen takes rook, and it's stronger having our bishop there because it keeps the king in the corner. And we can follow up with bishop takes knight, and it gives our king an escape square if any back row check should threaten king to g2.
Interesting.
So let's see what if anything.
I guess you're queen d6, like you said.
Yeah, let's look at queen to d6. Let's see. Let's take a look at bishop to d6 for a second, attacking the knight.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Bishop to d6 attacking the knight. We have knight to g6 check, king up. We have bishop takes knight, pawn takes. Then we have queen takes g7 checkmate. See, if the bishop comes up, the only thing defending g7 is the knight, which we're going to take out with bishop takes knight.
Ah, I see. That's a bit simpler than I thought. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the bishop blocks the queen from defending. So the bishop can't move. So if he tries, say, queen up, then the similar stuff should happen. Now he does have the check on d1, but our king is safe going up to g2, and there's no follow-up checks. So I'm thinking now we just do knight takes bishop, and we threaten queen takes rook. If the rook moves, of course, if it goes here, we could just take it. And if he does this spite check, we just come up here.
You know, some people were suggesting earlier to play g4 instead of bishop takes f5. That's an interesting move also. I didn't think about that.
What move?
g4 to try to kick the defending knight out of the way.
Where? Right here?
I'm not quite sure where they were in the stream, but like I guess
right
at
here?
many moments. No, maybe probably after bishop b4. Then like
queen up.
Yeah.
Yeah, g4 would be
G4
interesting.
is also interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, g4 might work, but it's unnecessary
Yeah,
because
sure.
knight takes bishop crashes through it. We're on the rook.
Yeah.
Plus, we've got the bishop takes knight, knight takes. We got all kinds of possibilities. Well, he can't do rook here, so he can't really even threaten our knight. He could go here, but now I think he's pretty defenseless.
In that queen d1 line that you had a second ago, king g2, there's no nonsense. Oh, knight h4 doesn't work because you have a bishop to take it. It makes it much easier.
Knight to d, queen here.
Yeah.
King here.
And then
there's a check.
Yeah, there's knight h4 and knight e3.
Well, h4
is guarded by the bishop. I missed it.
Oh, yeah.
That makes it much simpler to calculate because otherwise.
Well, I could move the king here
to h where? Oh, after
And if he checks here, I take it. And there's no checks.
I can't even play g5. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Well, I'm not sure. I think
it looks like it would work.
I think it goes knight here check, and if there's a queen check, then then what? Can we hide? Oh, then we can do this.
Guarding.
And if here,
the queen's guarding it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the queen's guarding it. So he runs out of checks.
Yeah,
and if he checks here, we go up there.
Yeah, I think that's it. They can't even play g5, which helps.
Well, wait a minute.
They're pinned, right?
Wait a minute. Oh, no, if he goes here, if we go he could go there.
What, if we go king h4, what's wrong? You can't do anything.
Oh, it's pinned.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I was thinking he could do g5
I thought it'd be a
check.
little complicated.
But then I was thinking we could go to the white square g4, and he doesn't have anything. But it's pinned, so it's moot.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one. How are we doing on time? We have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We're making good headway here. We're also getting to the really hard ones. Remember, two basic, two intermediate, two really hard ones. Oh, that was the last hard one.
Oh.
Now we're in our mate and two puzzles. And
Oh,
then
no.
I would have to say these are hard.
These are the Stochi ones?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Now,
These are challengers.
Danny is here with me, Danny Machuca, and he and I, about a year and a half ago or so, we started trying to solve these things, and we would spend an hour and a half racking our brains on it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we solved it, sometimes we didn't. But since then, I've learned from doing a lot of them that there's a method. Rather than looking at all white's possible moves, there's so many possible moves. What you have to do is analyze the black king position and the white king position. And you want to look for, first, let's do the white king. It's quite simple. You just make sure there are no checks on the white king. And you can see that there's no possible pieces in this that can check the white king. The black pawn on a5 shields the white king. There's no bishop. The white squared bishop is way over here. On the black white squared bishop is on h5, blocked by pawn and knight. It can't even move. So, and the knight can't. Nothing can reach the white king. So, sometimes there is a check on the white king. You have to be able to take the piece that checks and do a checkmate. So that's what you look for. But the real focus is on the black king. You look for the escape squares. So there is an escape square here, right here. Wrong color though. Let's try this. The black king can move up one square, and then he could have another square in front of that. So we have to work out a checkmate to cover that king move. Now the other thing to do is look at the pieces, the white pieces and pawns that surround the black king, and you'll see that some of the squares are covered by two pieces, a rook and knight. Let's look at the white knight on h4. It covers, and the rook covers f5. And that's a possible checkmate at some point. Rook to f5 check. It doesn't work right away because he could take the knight, because the rook defends the knight. Plus he could still move up. But the fact that the rook and the knight cover that square means we could move the rook or the knight, and the other piece still covers the square. So we do that with the other squares. The white rook on d1 covers that whole file. Now, that white rook is and the white bishop on a3, they both cover the same square on d6. Well, that's bishop to d6 is a possible checkmate if the black bishop moves off the diagonal.
We got a couple guesses. I don't know if we're ready for accepting guesses yet, but knight d8 and knight g6 are the people are looking for.
Those are good guesses, but let me continue the thought process because we can whittle it down a little bit. I can tell you for a fact that bishop on a3 is not moving. It might do a checkmate by going to d6, but there's nothing to be gained moving it anywhere. The king is not going to move. That rook on d1 is not going to move, and the two pawns on c3 and c4, they cover important squares, but they're not going to move. That rook on f6 is not going to move. The pawn protects the rook. It's blocked, the pawn can't move, and this bishop here is not going to move. But if that knight moves, that bishop is going to cover that diagonal and take away the escape square. That's part of our checkmate. Now the other thing is, someone said, now we're ready to look at the suggestions.
So we have knight g6, knight d8, two rook e1s, two people for rook e1, and a rook d4 as well.
Now let's cover rook to e1. rook to e1 is a potential checkmate, except the black queen can block queen to e3. If the black queen diagonal gets blocked by, say, a knight or some other move, then rook to e1 is a checkmate. It's part of the solution, but it's not the key move.
Because they have queen blocks, right?
Now, what were the other? If someone said knight to d8.
D8, yeah.
Now, knight to d8 is a very attractive move because it threatens rook to e6. The knight vacates the square, and rook to e6 covers the escape square and is checkmate. So that threatens checkmate in one.
Interesting.
And black can stop that checkmate in different ways, but it will allow some other checkmate. So whoever said knight to d8, that is the key move. Now, the reason they call it the key move, it's like a lock or a vault in a bank. You find the move, no matter what black does, he can stop rook to e6 checkmate. It opens up a different checkmate. Okay, so first of all, he could do knight takes knight, and that stops rook, but it opens up the queen line. See that? The queen then comes back here. There's your checkmate. And this is how it works. Every way he stops that. So if the knight goes here, we have the same thing, queen in checkmate. So that pretty much does that knight. Oh, and we said the king could escape here. Is there a checkmate here? There is a checkmate here. The king here, the knight is pinned by the queen, so, and the other knight's pinned by the bishop.
Oh,
so there's no way to block.
That's nice. Yeah, okay.
These are very clever.
That's clever.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the king can't move up. We got the escape square covered. We're still threatening there, and he has other ways to stop it. Let's think of another way to stop it. First of all, he could move his queen here, and that covers the e6 square. But the queen moving opens up some other possibility that we have to discover.
I was going to say, which is?
It was here a minute ago. What is it? Oh, who was it who said rook to e1? Remember, the queen was blocking on e3. So there's your rook to e1 checkmate.
Okay.
Yeah, the queen had to guard e3. That's an overworked queen.
Right, right.
Okay. Now there's another queen move. Of course, that really is a no-brainer because knight takes and. Wait a minute, that's an escape square.
Well, can we do rook e1 again? Is that the theme? Whenever the queen moves rook e1, or it doesn't work this time?
Yeah, rook to e1 again.
Yeah,
rook
right.
to e1.
Same theme.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. See how the little mate shows up there when you get it right? Yeah. All right, now let's see if there's anything else. If the knight moves, the other knight, or the bishop moves, we have the rook check. Let's see. Oh, okay, let's try knight over here. That allows the black rook on a6 to cover the threatened knight to e6, the rook to e6
I
checkmate.
see.
But it blocks the queen from the f7 square,
Of course.
and our white queen now covers the e4 escape square. Previously
beautiful.
blocked by the knight.
Wow, knight d8 was a very strong move.
Yeah. So that's that. Let's move.
We have some questions about alternative answers, and maybe
Okay.
we'll have to figure out why they're wrong.
You mean in the starting position?
Yeah, the starting position.
All right.
So one person was asking, what if we just do queen takes queen, and then whatever they do, rook e1 mate? Because
Let's clear the board of all the arrows. So the question was queen takes queen?
Yeah, with the idea of rook e1, since rook e1 was stopped by the queen block.
Well, that's true. But I got to tell you that these puzzles typically don't start with a capture or check because the composers think it's too blunt.
Yeah.
They want to be subtle.
I would assume so.
Okay.
So now specifically, though, we'll find out why it doesn't work. Rook e1 idea. I guess they can...
Wait a minute. Queen takes. Okay, it is queen takes. Okay, queen takes.
Yeah, with the idea, yeah.
Of
shuffle
what?
that rook over.
Where?
They were saying rook e1
rook
is
to
stopped by the
E1.
queen block. So what if
Okay.
we just get rid of the queen? That makes
Well,
some sense.
that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now. We
maybe
gave up the queen
yeah.
to d5 checkmate, remember? We're threatening here. We're threatening there.
Maybe the bishop can just come to
Yeah, the bishop can come up and
like
block,
yeah.
gum up the works.
yeah, if you're just a single turn, I think.
Yeah, and that there's no immediate checkmate that I can see.
Hopefully.
Because we still have the escape square e4.
Yeah.
So rook to d5 check doesn't cut it.
Mm-hmm.
Queen to c7 check doesn't cut it because the bishop blocks bishop back. It's checkmate, but that's 3 moves. It doesn't count.
Yeah.
What's another try? Someone else had another try? Besides queen takes queen?
I think the other try I answered in chat. It was a knight was hanging.
We go on to the next one?
Yeah, I think we can go to F.
Okay.
The next one.
All right. Now this one's easier. You see, there's much fewer pieces. No queens. This is going to be much easier.
Oh, not harder.
But we have to do it in a similar fashion. There are no checks on the white king, so we can... Now let's focus on the black king. The rook, the white rook, this one, and this rook comes this way. And of course there's a possible check here. And if that knight were to move, there's a possible rook check right there too. So those are possible rook checks. Now the king isn't going to move, it's just going to sit there. Now if the white rook were to move, it would free up, the bishop could go here check. And the bishop protects the rook, which is important. So that rook is defended by knight and bishop, meaning we could move the knight or the bishop if we want to. Plus we could move the rook somewhere and we would still have the squares covered. Now the knight, now let's look at the white bishop on c6. We could move it, but the black king's on a black square. That means we're not going to move the white bishop. There's nothing to be gained. Now the white bishop on the black square, it can't check the king unless we move the white rook. And we would have a rook move and bishop to c5 checkmate. That's a possibility, but I don't give it a high probability because the rook covers all those squares on the c file. And if you were to move it along the 5th row, you'd open up squares. It could move to king to c4. So that rook's not going to move. It's not going to be the bishop on a3, the rook, the king, the rook on e1, or the bishop. It's going to be the knight move.
Interesting.
So what is the square for the knight move? Now look, when the knight moves out of the way, we have rook here, checkmate, protected by the bishop. So that means that that knight can go anywhere. Now, the black king is on a black square, and the knight's going to move to a black square. Then it'll threaten a check on two white squares, b5 and f5. If it goes to c3, and pawn takes knight, doesn't cut it because of rook to e4 checkmate.
I see.
And we're threatening the two knights, which are checkmates. Now, that's the solution. No matter, now he can stop the rook to f5 checkmate. And we're also threatening rook to d5. That's checkmate too, isn't it? So let's just do the easy one. Pawn takes knight doesn't cut it because rook here, and you can see the checkmate over here.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the rook could move and stop that checkmate, but it doesn't stop that one, does it? Okay. Now, the knight could move, and that stops the rook checkmate, and it stops that checkmate, doesn't it? But it doesn't stop the knight checkmate. The rook's covered by the bishop. See, we had the two knight checks. All right. Now, we could do knight takes, but it's the same thing. In fact, it's not the same thing. With that rook gone, he has an escape square on e3, but the other check covers it, and there's our checkmate.
There it is.
That covers it.
Nice. That covers it.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Okay, we have one question, though, maybe before we go. Is that, why didn't king c1 work?
First move?
I think it's pretty...
Well, first of all, what does king to c1... What's your checkmate? Oh, bishop to g...
Yeah.
The problem is... Let's see if there's a problem.
Oh, rook could check.
How about pawn up check?
Yeah.
Bishop check. We block.
Yeah.
That stops it. And you might get it in 3 moves. That doesn't count.
Yeah. It was a good answer, but not
good
for
try.
Checkmate. All right.
Any others?
That was it, yeah.
Okay, thanks for coming. Have a good night.